Okay, we'll get started. So welcome again, everyone, and thank you for joining Nature Kids BC this morning for our Fall Virtual Explore Day. My name is Caitlin Bassat, and I'm the Provincial Network Coordinator with Nature Kids BC, and I'm a third-generation European settler joining in this morning from Tk'emlúps to Secwepemc, also known as Kamloops on the traditional territories of the Secwepemc peoples. Before I begin, I'd like to emphasize how grateful we are to live, play, and carry out our work in British Columbia, which is Indigenous land. There are over 200 First Nation communities in BC, and do you know which community is connected to the land that you are on this morning? A warm welcome to our member families and kids who are Zooming in, and for all our guests for joining us as well. Like we mentioned, we welcome you to take a moment to tell us where you're joining from in the chat this morning. And if you have a question during the presentation, I invite you to put it in the chat and then I'll bring it forward to ask Kate today. And if you have your passport to nature with you this morning, please show it, as this counts as one adventure. And once you have filled in all 6, you can mail it in or take a photo and email it to us for a prize. I'm now very excited to introduce this morning's special guest, Katie Sotelo from the Sierra Club of BC. Sierra Club BC is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to support people stewarding abundant ecosystems and a stable climate while building resilient, equitable communities. So please welcome Kate.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I feel so honored to be with you all here today. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen a little bit and talking about what we're going to be doing today together. So let me just do all of that. We're going to mainly be doing guessing games surrounding plants and ecosystems. So by raise of hands, who thinks that they're really good at knowing different plants or knowing different things about ecosystems? Okay, it looks like we have some hands up. All right, that's super exciting. I'm just very excited to be with everyone today. And yeah, let's get right into it. So this is me. My name is Kate Sotelo, and I am the Education Team Program Lead at Sierra Club BC. I want to just say that Sierra Club BC does a bunch of different work, but we're really just here to foster land-based learning. So in addition to virtual programs like this, we also do in-person presentations in classrooms, K to 12, that's land-based learning. And we talk about ecosystems, different beings and their gifts. And today we are also going to be talking about different beings, plants, and their gifts and how they contribute a little bit to ecosystem resilience. So let's start off with a very easy question. Why are plants important? So can you put in the chat why you think plants are important? And I will try to see the chat. They make our air clean. Yes, absolutely. What else? They also make our water clean in addition to the air. Yeah, some are medicines and some are homes to animals. I think we're going to look at one today that can be medicine and another thing. Yes, animals live in them and need places to survive. That's really good. Yeah, oh, homes to animals. Yes, absolutely. Any other ones? There's a big one that I think we're missing on here. Okay. Seeds. Oh yeah, seeds also. There we go. I was looking for those. Yeah, food source. Very nice. And if you can you put what your favorite food that is also a plant is into the chat so that I can see? Mine is actually coffee. Huckleberries. Ooh, very nice. Very interesting choice. All right, I'm gonna go to the next slide that has all of the different ones on here. Coconut is so good. Chocolate is so good. Um, okay, yeah. So they make our world beautiful. They have medicinal properties. One that I really love that has medicinal properties that most people can find is plantain or ribswort. You can make it into a poultice, and it's often found on like soccer fields or where cement and grass meet. I actually have a huge scar on my arm here. It's gonna be blurry, so you can't see it, but I broke my arm a little bit ago, and I've been putting the poultice with ribwort on it, and the scar has been healing really nicely, which is super exciting. I know a bunch of you guys said the oxygen, they help us breathe. They are an important part in the food chain. They provide shelter for all different kinds of beings, big and small. We think of little insects and birds, but then also bears who make their dens inside um, of trees. I actually saw a video recently of a bear that had dug its way into a Douglas fir tree and was going through torpor during the winter, which is super awesome. All right. Oh, peaches, potatoes, and rhubarb. Very nice. Very nice. But we're gonna move on to the next part of today, which is actually a little guessing game. So this is a super common plant in coastal British Columbia. And each slide will slowly reveal more parts of the plant and include a little fact about it. And I want you guys to put your guesses in the chat as soon as I start to reveal it. So some of you might be able to guess super quickly. Some of you might be able to guess at the very end. But I think everyone's going to get it right. So we'll start off with the first photo. Most of it is blocked off here, but this plant is often found growing out of nurse logs and stumps. So if you don't know what a nurse log or a nurse stump is, it is a tree that has fallen, but I think of it as the energy, but it is also the nutrients of the tree allow for new plants to pop out of them. Oh my gosh, guesses in the chat already. I have 3 more slides, but you guys are doing very well. This might confirm some guesses, but it is my favorite type of pie. Up in Oakland, California, but I would go up to visit my family in Washington and in BC, and they would gather a bunch of these and make a pie out of it. Um, and then hint number 3, and most of you, the ones that I can see in the chat, have guessed correctly, but it is closely related to oval leaf blueberry, and it's something that can be eaten fresh, frozen, dried, or jammed. And you can see in the background the little fruits. Yeah, okay, very nice. So I'm gonna reveal it on the next slide, and I also have the Hunkaminam audio recording about 3 seconds into the slide. So, as the people in the chat guessed on the first slide correctly, it is huckleberry.
Scorches.
So that's how it is said in Hunkaminam. And congratulations to anyone who guessed this correctly. I think I saw 3 correct guesses in the chat there. And I encourage everyone to look up how to pronounce it. I see some people pumping up over there. Very nice. But I encourage everyone to look up how to pronounce plants in their areas, in also the native languages in their areas. So next, we're going to go into a guessing game part 2. And so I took this photo at a school site that I was at in a school in Coquitlam. And these are common plants that you'll see everywhere. And we're going to do a guessing game for 5 different plants in this photo. So it's going to be a little bit harder, but you can number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you have a guess on any of them. But since we're going to be in Coquitlam, which is in coastal BC, do you have an idea of what biome we are going to be looking at? So what biome? You can put it in the chat if you know it. What ecosystem is? Yeah, very nice. Yes, it is the coastal rainforest, temperate rainforest. All right, let's get into this. So I'm going to go slower through these so that you guys have a little bit more time to look at everything. The last one was really fast. So we have, you'll see these little magnifying glasses, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And right next to them are different clues about each plant. So I'm going to go through them. Number 1 is this skinny little tree right here. And it is a sapling, so a young tree of some of the larger surrounding trees. Number 2 is down here, and they are some of the first plants to grow back after an ecosystem disaster. Number three, we have this plant right here and the roots or rhizomes of this plant. So they travel underneath the ground, can be roasted and eaten. Number four is this bigger tree right here, and it is sometimes known as the fire tree because of its fire resistant bark. And some of you also might have heard the story of I don't want to give away this tree, so I'm going to try to not say its name. There was a little mouse, and it was running around the forest looking for shelter from a bunch of different types of trees because a fire was coming. And it went up to one tree, asked, "Can I stay here?" Tree said, "No, it will not I will not be able to protect you from the fire." And it went around tree to tree until it finally found this one, which is number 4, and this tree said, "Yes, you can stay with me and I will protect you from the fire," because it has that fire-resistant bark. And now to this day, if you look at the cones which hold the seeds of the tree, you can kind of see a little mouse feet and tail that pops out of it. It's a really, really cute one. Um, and number 5, this tree right here in the back, it's also, known as the tree of life for its variety of uses for many coastal First Nations. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys look at this one because I have more hints for you, but I see some in the chat that look a little correct. All right, so number 1, it's very, very hard to see, but these trees have edible needles that can give a citrus or bitter flavor to your teas. I think that they're really good. You shouldn't have too many because it'll give you an upset stomach. These trees also tend to grow where the herring fish tend to swim. So those two get along really well together. And then number 2, the very, very bottom, again, down here, these are ancient life forms that tend to grow on the north side of trees. And this is not always true. It's true in the northern hemisphere because the north sides of trees are darker and more damp, and that tends to be what this type of life form appreciates. Number 3, these plants are identifiable from their thumbs or their handles that stick out from the back of each frond. Number 4, I'm seeing some really good guesses, everyone. You guys are doing a really good job. Number 4, this cone has very unique bracts. Those are the ones that I was talking about with the little mouse feet and the tail. And then number 5, this tree species is the same as the biggest tree in BC. All right, I'm gonna look at the chat now to see who's got some correct answers. Elliot's got some correct answers. Sage and Sparrow have quite a few. Kelly also has some. Okay, it looks like people are doing really well. Okay, I think Sage and Sparrow might have done the best at this particular challenge because number 1 is a western hemlock sapling. So hemlock trees grow where herring spawn, and they have citrusy needles. They're really cool. Number 2 is moss. You could have just said moss, but if we're looking at specifics, this one is, when I was here, it looked like steppe moss and feather moss. Steppe moss is actually my favorite plant, because they look like this. They look like little steps on top of each other, and they're very cute. I'm a sucker for any plant that I think is cute, and I really think that moss is cute. Number 3 is sword fern. So, sword fern, their little fronds look like handles, and that's how you know that it's a sword fern because it looks like you could go like choo, 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 choo. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing that in the chat. Sage and Sparrow shared that their family put hemlock into the ocean during herring spawn, and the fish lay eggs on the trees. They do get along really well. Number 4, the story that I was telling about the mouse and the fire-resistant bark is the Douglas fir tree. Interesting thing about this is even though the bark is really thick and it can survive fire, a Seychelles elder told me that you can take the sap of the Douglas fir and you can put it on wet leaves, and it's still easy to start a fire even though the leaves are wet because you have the sap, which is also very interesting and another thing related to fire. If you have any questions about fire, that was my specialty in college. So please ask me about that. But I also encourage you to put any other questions you have into the chat. And then number 5, the tree of life is the Western red cedar. You can weave cedar into very beautiful things. I had a friend up in Haida, and a huge cedar actually fell in his backyard, and he called us all up there to help carve it into a canoe. And it was a really beautiful moment. And they have this rot resistant wood that's super amazing for like building smaller scale canoes. And so everyone, give yourself a little round of applause. You did an amazing job. I have one more question to ask you, and it's what community members help sustain the forest? And I want you to think really big and small about community members. So, when we talk about plants and animals, those are also members of our community. We see them all the time. I personally see raccoons all the time. But I want you to put in the chat what community members help sustain the forest. Is that the same cedar to keep bugs from eating clothes? That is a really good question. I do not know about a cedar that helps to keep bugs from eating your clothes, but it could be the same one. I'm sorry that I can't help with that question. But anyways, put in the chat, I'm monitoring it, for which community members you think help sustain the forest. Bears, very nice. Yes. Bears are a really important part of a couple. A lot of the times people think about bears as if they were carnivores, but they also eat a lot of berries, and skunk cabbage is one of my favorites that bears eat. People should not eat skunk cabbage, and I'll tell you why. Bears eat skunk cabbage right when they pop up so that they can poop. It helps them alleviate a lot of maybe backed up poop. So we definitely shouldn't eat that, but it's all from the winter. Oh yeah, let's go. Oh my gosh, so many in here. Squirrels. Squirrels help us carry seeds from one place to another. Sparrows, songbirds, worms, beetles. Yes. Worms are really interesting. And so are beetles in terms of how they help cycle nutrients through the soil. So they worms really like to eat the soil. I'm sorry I'm talking so much about poop, but it's necessary. And they also help poop out things, and it cycles the soil so that more trees and more plants can also get nutrients. Firefighters, I have a lot of friends who are firefighters, and they really help protect our forests, and they are so amazing. Squirrels, pill bugs, environmentalists, huge. We love environmentalists. Birds and mushrooms. Yes, I love that people are talking about mushrooms. I'll talk a little bit more about those in the next slide. Ants, bugs, human volunteers. Shout out to our volunteers. Um, we love them. Woo! All right, I'll go over to the next slide. I threw in a few little gifts so that there is dynamics on this one. You can see the ants down here that people talked about, the songbirds right here. They're kind of blended in, but there's fungi on the bottom. And I wanted to talk about insects a little bit because insects are super important parts of our food chain, even if I'm not a huge fan of mosquitoes. They bite me throughout the summer, but they have a role. And also, a reason that I super appreciate spiders is because they eat those mosquitoes. This tiny one on a tree is a squirrel. I couldn't find a better photo of a squirrel. And then, of course, I put humans because humans are so important. Yes, plants help the forest, and they keep the forest green, and it's so beautiful. I also put some deer here, but everything plays a role, and it's important to understand that keeping the balance is the most important part. And then fungus is something that I think is so important because who here has heard of trees talking to each other via mushrooms. Yeah, absolutely. It's so freaking sick. It's so cool that they basically attach themselves to root systems. And if one tree is super stressed out, they can help share nutrients and keep other trees alive. And they form this huge community of all really nice people. Well, people, plants. And I wanted to leave a little bit of time at the end for just some final thoughts to ponder, and also if anyone had any questions for me, or about the work that I do, or about anything that I can maybe answer, I will try. But yeah, some final thoughts is just to keep looking high and low. There's nature that's all around us. What's the nature that's outside of your doors? You know, I grew up in an area that didn't have many trees. It was very, very cementy. It was very city. So I feel so grateful to be here and be able to see all of the beautiful nature. And are these plants seasonal right now? We actually have a winter solstice curriculum. If anyone is really interested in the winter or the winter solstice or the fall equinox, we've got a couple of worksheets on those and all of the traditions that are celebrated at this time. And think about if there's any medicine people, foragers, botanists, or science educators in your community that if you have questions about the plants, that you can reach out to. And then I am required to put this last one, which is book a workshop with SCBC today to learn more. But that is required by my work. You don't have to. So now, oh yeah, thank you for linking the worksheet, Caitlin. That's awesome. All right. I'm going to go to the thank you slide. I know this is a short and sweet program, but I'm really thankful for all the people who came by today and how good you all are at guessing the plants that are in your neighborhoods and in the backyards. You did an amazing job. I'm going to leave the floor open for any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Oh, it's back to us. Oh my
Thanks,
God,
Kate.
it's so nice to see your faces.
That was fantastic. Would anyone like to ask a question?
Yeah, Ashley?
Here, I'll ask you to unmute. I'll just push the button.
Um, uh, do you have any pets?
Is a really good question. I do not hear, but I have a beautiful puppy back home in California. Such a cutie pie, a little Australian shepherd named Bonnie, and I love her. Ooh, why do fires start? There's a couple of different reasons. Thanks for asking this question. Some of them are human influenced. So the reason that we say don't smoke cigarettes when you're outside is because the fires have these things called embers and they can spread to different areas. A lot of fires here start from lightning strikes, surprisingly. A lot of people think that most of them are human influenced, but there's a lot of variety in BC at least. And once they start, it usually becomes really big because we have droughts and we have very dry ground. We don't have groundwater. And the way the trees are set up in a lot of our ecosystems create a space for what we call ground fire to go to a crown fire.
I'd love to know what plants everyone is seeing around their communities right now. Are they noticing anything in the green spaces around them or their backyards? I'm in Kamloops and we've had a really warm November. So I actually planted some calendula this spring and they actually reseeded and I still have flowers in my front garden. So that's been really surprising for November. I see Elliot says it's snowing here today.
Yeah,
And
that's
Sage
awesome.
has
I'm
a good
jealous.
question. Sage and
Um,
Sarah, can we plant natural local plants in our yard?
Oh, I encourage you to plant
Yeah.
natural local plants in your yard. There's a lot of resources on depending on where you're living, what plants are best to grow there. But be careful because some of them smell bad. But I do encourage native plantings. I've seen a lot of Oregon grape around here in people's yards, which is really nice because you can also take all of those berries and make some delicious jams and jellies out of them.
Also, this time of year, leave your leaves. So don't rake your leaves. My partner's really happy because we never have to rake our leaves. The leaves are really important for insects to overwinter in them. So we rake our leaves in the springtime when it's at least 14 to 15 degrees outside. Then we know the insects have left. And then also too, in your gardens, leave your flower heads. Like, don't go and clean your gardens out for the winter because it's over the winter. So yeah, it's great. You can see you can also make tea from some of the berries. Oh, it's snowing in Salmon Arm. Awesome. Lots of great comments. Well, thank you so much, Kate, for this great presentation, all about how we're connected to plants in our communities. It's been so great having you here this morning, and a big thank you for everyone for joining here today. We will be sending out a bit of a newsletter resource to all of you that registered in a couple weeks, so watch for that, and the recording will also be available. Also, if you'd like to support our programming by leaving a donation, we greatly appreciate that, but we also just appreciate you joining us here this morning and learning more about nature. Our next Explore Day will be taking place in January, so please definitely watch for that. I don't have a passport with me here today to show it to you, but I'll make sure I include a link to our passport in that email that I'll be sending out in a week or so, just so you can see it. So thanks so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.